I suspect what we're inquiring here is to compare atheism to theism. Not necessarily religion. Religion and belief in God are not the same thing, otherwise Buddhism wouldn't be a religion and deism would. Introducing atheism as the other option implies the first option to be an antonym, ergo theism, the belief in gods. Is it more reasonable for someone to follow theism or atheism? Any which way we answer this question, it's going to be subjective to the individual, conforming to their preference for how to view the world. To believe in God, or not, both provide reasonable explanations for how and why the world operates the way it perceivably does. Many like to argue that their take on God's existence is absolute, and views the world best, but that has its own caveats that often go undisclosed. To say God exists begs many questions. What kind of God? What are its attributes? Is it concerned with human affairs? Is it triomni? These questions ought to be addressed to assert a belief in God as reasonable. Likewise, believing in no God must answer to its own claims. To say a God does not exist also begs many questions. How did the universe come about? How did life come about? Why are we so unique among the animal kingdom? How do we justify impossible probability? The questions ought to be addressed to assert a disbelief in God as reasonable. What about at face value? Most are going to have proposed solutions to these questions, so what we can put our focus on is which side of that aisle is more reasonable. Not surprisingly, this has already been addressed by the mathematician, Blaise Pascal. He formulated a simplistic equation that shows upon wagering to believe in God against not, you have more to lose having no faith. Pascal's wager states: upon death, a belief in God, if true, grants infinite gain. If untrue, finite loss. Upon death, a disbelief in God, if true, grants finite gain. If untrue, infinite loss. Let's address something here before critics of the wager jump aboard. This is not a foundational argument to have faith, but as a logical rationale for investigating into God, lest you're wrong and miss out. It doesn't prove God exists, and it most certainly has no say in which religion to follow. The common critique is that Pascal's wager doesn't work, because all religions are the same, therefore it's a moot comparison. The biggest problem in that thinking is that all religions are the same. We know this isn't remotely true, since most religions have directly conflicting doctrines, theologies, and orthodoxies. Some are deed-based salvation, some are grace-based. These characteristics are necessary criteria to measure against other ideas of life to find a consistency that may be true, be that even if one concludes there is no God. The other major flaw in this refutation is that atheism must also be included in that religion comparison, not as a religion, but as an alternative, and it still comes short of being a reasonable bet. Again, this does not prove God's existence. It has little weight in a foundational argument, but serves to show that regardless, adhering to atheism is a less reasonable worldview to follow. Doesn't mean atheism is untrue. In a sense, religion. You can't follow atheism, because there is nothing to follow. It is a single belief, that there is no God. There is no implicit direction, no instruction. Most atheists, myself included, have a much broader worldview, and I think it would surprise many theists how little a part atheism plays in it. Many atheists will tell you not to follow religion. Others will tell you to follow the evidence. I suppose I'll follow the latter, but in a different direction. What matters is not how the world came into being. For most of our decisions, this is of no relevance at all. What matters is kindness. If your religion encourages you to greater compassion, follow it. If you find it makes you more hard-hearted, bitter, judgmental, resentful, find something to replace it. It may be a different interpretation of the religion you're in, it may be a different religion, it may be no religion at all. Compassion is reasonable.